Evidence leaders at the State Capture Commission have accused the former Environmental Affairs Minister, Nomvula Mokonyane, of having lied under oath. Now, Mokunyani is testifying before the inquiry, at least she was a little bit earlier on today, for a second time in relation to Bosasa allegations of corruption. Now, in January of last year, the State Capture Commission heard how Mokunyani attended a birthday party with former Bosasa COO Angelo Agrizzi. Our reporter Tumaole Mohlaoli is following the story for us, and he joins us live now in the studio. Tumaole, from your reflections today, what stood out from Ms. Mokunyani's testimony and just all the happenings at the State Capture Commission?
Absolutely. What stood out for me is the fact that the State Capture Commission evidence leader, Advocate Noche, putting it very succinctly to Mokunyani that she had misled the commission. He was saying that, holding no punches, that she had earlier testified that Angelo Agrizzi was out on a vendetta against her when he testified that he had attended a birthday party, and that that birthday party was, of course, thrown on her behalf by Bosasa. She said Agrizzi had a vendetta against her and he hated women, all sorts of other allegations, saying that it was just basically his testimony was meant to discredit her character. Now, what then happened is that the owner of the guest house, which held the function, then came and testified that indeed such a party did take place, and this then threw Mokunyani's testimony into disarray, basically out of the water. She then came back and said, well, upon reflecting further, I realized that perhaps it was another party he was talking about, and I couldn't have remembered what would have happened because I'm not really a person who goes out to party. I don't put much emphasis on my celebrations. It was a surprise party thrown to me for my birthday. Now, if we can listen to the clip right here, Advocate Noche, the evidence leader, was having none of it.
Do you agree with me that the evidence you gave that day, where you denied that there was a party at guest house, was misleading?
It wasn't misleading. Never was it my intention. Never has it been. And hence I've come and I've made this submission, having read first, before even getting the evidence from the commission, having read what was in the newspapers, and also having gone back home to recollect what happened when I turned 40.
I think what was quite key in this particular conversation regarding the party as well is the fact that this really happened over 18 years ago. And Ms. Mokunyane, they're saying that in her mind she was talking about the 50th birthday party. That's the one that was freshest in her mind. But one issue that also was discussed, and if we could just touch on this a bit, is the issue of security features, the CCTV in her house, that who exactly had installed those features. Was it courtesy of Bosasa, or was it government, or was it their own private company?
If you listen and go by what Angelo Agrizzi would say, he had testified that the security installations, including the CCTV cameras, was installed on the payroll and paid for by Bosasa. Now, what Mokunyani's evidence before the commission is that, of course, she stated that there were no such features that were installed, according to her knowledge, by Bosasa at her property. Again, discrediting Angelo Agrizzi's testimony. Now, what the commission then went and did is that it got the service provider and the maintenance guy who went and installed the particular CCTV footage, and he gave a good account of what the property looked like. So his evidence was deemed as credible, and he then said that Angelo Agrizzi is the one who then signed off on the invoice. When this was put to Ms. Mokunyane, her response was that she would not necessarily know who was responsible for security detail. There was a bit of contradictions there about she assumed that the security detail would have been done by provincial government because she was at the time MEC and the provincial government of Gauteng. However, Advocate Noche produced a document from the department that is responsible for security upgrades, basically stating that they had never done any such work on behest of Ms. Mokunyane or being tasked by the provincial government to do that. So again, that was a contradiction that was pointed out, a very poignant one. Raises the question, Tami, the very important question, that here you have a very senior member of government provincially at the time, and then she also went on to become the Environmental Affairs Minister. And in those positions, positions, the security is one of the key elements. So who indeed is in charge of security? How can you absolve yourself of knowing what the security arrangements, once you occupy such a particularly important portfolio, are about? So it just raises the question of how this was dealt with, and in her mind, who would have been tasked and who would have been responsible for being in charge of a security detail. If indeed it was Bosasa, then again it raises serious questions about how far of an influence and how far of access such a company would have to the personal life of a particular high-ranking member of government, and whether that would then create a conflict of interest in terms of the extensions and the wide-ranging contracts Bosasa had with government at the time.
I think timelines here also seemed to be very important, because when Mokonyane was responding to that, she was asking, she said, after I left Gauteng, then we as a family, meaning her husband and herself, were the ones that took care of their security, and they'd gotten a private company. Yes. So I think, you know, in those type of situations, being specific as to which area of her service with the government are we talking about, then we'd know who would have been responsible for what at that particular time. But also, if you could talk to us about the importance of that 2.2 million rand that the evidence leader was hopping on about, which was a deposit for that Aston Martin. Why was that an important question for him to ask today, and what was that in relation to this Bosasa case?
Very important question in terms of the Commission's scope of investigation when it relates to state capture and undue relationships between officials who are tasked in state and business entities which did business with the state, and how they got to those contracts. Because if you look at a 2.2 million rand Aston Martin, I think the evidence leader broke it down in terms of how much, in terms of installments per month. I mean, it is astronomical that you would have to pay. And then he basically then juxtaposed that with Nomvula Mokunyane's salary at the time. And you would then just look at it and see that it doesn't add up. I mean, it's a quantum leap from what she was earning to what you would need to pay per month for the car. How do you then get to finance such a car? This would speak to the evidence about bags of money or large payments that would have been allegedly done by Bosasa, which Angelo Agrisi claimed that she would have received retainers, which would be transfers of large amounts of money into her bank accounts, basically for that undue relationship, to ensure that Bosasa had a person of key influence to ensure that their contracts were therefore guaranteed and safeguarded. That's what that spoke to.
Well, thank you so much for this update on the State Capture Commission for today, Tumaole. That's our Tumaole Mohlaoli, who's been covering the State Capture Commission.